Most people trust their coffee without a second thought. The brand looks familiar, the label says premium, and the smell feels like morning. But behind that comfort, some of the biggest names in coffee are cutting corners. Cheap beans, over-roasting, and chemical fixes disguised as flavor. These aren't rare mistakes. They're built into how industrial coffee is made today, mass-produced blends that trade taste for shelf life and marketing over quality. And while we think we're drinking the same brew we grew up with, what's in the jar has changed. The truth is simple, some coffees no longer deserve a place in your kitchen. In this video, we'll break down 5 brands that have lost their way and 2 that still honor what real coffee should be. Because if a cup is how you start your day, it should never begin with a lie. 1. Folgers. Folgers used to mean home. The red can, the smell that filled kitchens before sunrise, it was the picture of comfort. For generations, that logo wasn't just a brand, it was the sound of a day beginning. But what once symbolized American reliability has turned into something hollow. Today's Folgers doesn't taste like the one people remember. Blind taste tests in 2024 ranked its classic roast near the bottom for bitterness, burnt aroma, and lack of body. Reviewers called it flat and ashy, a coffee that tastes more like nostalgia than beans. The label still reads mountain grown, but that promise means little when the beans are mass-sourced, over-roasted, and stored long past their peak. Folgers' decline isn't about one bad batch, it's about an industrial shift. What used to be a slow roast process has become a high-speed production cycle, designed for volume, not taste. Robusta beans, cheaper and more bitter than Arabica, now make up much of the blend. They survive harsh roasting and long shipping better, but they also strip away the smoothness that once defined the brand. What fills the can now is efficiency, not craft. You can smell the difference. That once warm, nutty aroma has turned sharp, almost metallic. It clings to the air but doesn't invite you in. Brew a cup and the first sip shocks the tongue, harsh at first, then strangely empty. There's no depth, no rounded flavor, just a bitter surface that lingers. Add sugar or cream and it still feels off, as if the coffee was built to be tolerated, not enjoyed. This isn't to say Folgers completely failed. It succeeded at staying cheap and everywhere. It's on every supermarket shelf, in office break rooms, and on road trips. It's reliable in the way instant noodles are predictable, fast, and forgettable. But that's exactly the problem. When a brand that once represented care now represents convenience, something essential disappears. The marketing hasn't changed, the words rich, smooth, and aroma sealed still appear, but the product behind them has. In a world where coffee lovers seek freshness, Folgers offers preservation. It's designed to survive months in storage, not to taste alive. Every step from grinding to packaging is optimized for scale, which means no one's tasting it before you do. Many still buy it because of memory. It's the coffee their parents brewed, the one that smelled like mornings before work. But memories can't mask what's missing, the character that made those mornings worth remembering. The Folgers you taste now feels like a photocopy of an original. The outline is there, but the warmth and depth have faded. That's why disappointment with Folgers isn't just about flavor, it's about trust. The company built decades of loyalty, then quietly traded that trust for volume. The bitterness you taste isn't only in the cup, it's in realizing the brand stopped caring when people stopped noticing. Moreover, it's not that Americans forgot what good coffee is. It's that the definition of good enough shrank to fit the margins of mass production. Folgers is the result, a coffee that wins on memory, not merit. In the end, the can still shines red, the slogan still comforts, but the soul behind it is gone. Folgers hasn't just lost its flavor, it's lost its reason to exist. Familiar name, forgotten taste, that's Folgers today. 2. Maxwell House. Ranked last in a 2024 national taste test, Maxwell House didn't just disappoint, it shocked people who once swore by it. Reviewers described it as burnt water with caffeine, a coffee that smelled like chemicals and tasted like metal. The blue can that once stood for steady mornings has become a symbol of how far a brand can drift from its promise. Brew a cup today and you'll notice it right away. The steam rises thin, carrying a sharp, almost sour scent. The color looks strong, but the flavor collapses instantly. The first sip hits with bitterness, then fades into something flat and hollow. There's no warmth, no lingering depth, only a dry aftertaste that feels more like residue than comfort. Add sugar or cream and the taste doesn't improve, it just dulls everything else. It wasn't always this way. Decades ago, Maxwell House had a rich, almost buttery smoothness. The roast carried a soft caramel edge with a nutty sweetness that deepened as it cooled. The aroma filled the room before the first pour, and the flavor clung pleasantly to the tongue. You didn't drink it to wake up, you drank it because it made the morning feel right. That balance came from slower roasting, fresher beans, and a sense of patience that modern production rarely allows. Somewhere along the way, that patience disappeared. To stay competitive, Maxwell House leaned into speed and shelf life. The beans grew cheaper, often mixed with low-grade Robusta that could survive harsher roasting. The process became automated, the batches larger, the roasting hotter. Each shortcut shaved off flavor but saved a few cents. What was once a carefully tuned roast turned into an industrial routine. The company's fight to stay relevant is understandable. Coffee aisles are crowded with newcomers, boutique roasters, organic labels, instant cold brews. Prices are tight. Loyalty is fading, and consumers chase convenience more than quality. In trying to hold ground against that wave, Maxwell House turned to mass efficiency. But in doing so, it lost what once made it special. The result is a coffee that wakes you but doesn't reward you. It delivers caffeine, not character. The experience feels like something assembled, not crafted. The cup might be hot, but it's emotionally cold. The smell is there, but the story behind it is gone. The brand that used to feel proud and personal now feels mechanical. That decline says something larger about how the coffee industry has changed. Many legacy brands facing rising costs and shrinking margins have redefined good coffee to mean good enough. They rely on marketing slogans to keep memory alive, phrases like "good to the last drop," while the actual drops taste less like coffee and more like fatigue. It's easy to understand why people still buy it. It's cheap, reliable, and familiar. It sits on the same shelves it did 40 years ago. But familiarity isn't flavor, and routine isn't quality. When you sip it now, you can almost taste the compromise, not just in the beans, but in the idea of what coffee used to be. At first, you might not notice. In comparison to instant brands, it still feels comforting. But once you remember how Maxwell House once tasted round balanced aromatic, the new version feels like a ghost. Beyond that, it represents something even sadder: how a company can survive the market but lose its soul in the process. Ultimately, coffee is more than caffeine. It's connection, warmth, and memory, and when those fade, all that's left is bitterness. As one loyal customer said after decades of drinking the same brand, "It still wakes me up, but it doesn't make me smile anymore." 3 Starbucks. What happens when a company built on every cup matters must make tens of millions of cups every day? That's the question Starbucks has been quietly answering for years, not with words, but with process. To maintain its global rhythm, Starbucks has turned roasting into logistics. Beans are roasted darker, longer, and hotter than before, so every bag from Seattle to Singapore tastes identical. According to coffee consultant Jeff Howell, dark roasting hides variability. It's uniformity at the cost of nuance. That uniformity keeps global supply chains steady and prevents spoiled batches, but it also burns away the subtleties that make coffee feel alive. Inside the roasting facilities, precision replaces instinct. Conveyor belts roll with silver bags stamped with roast codes. Each must survive months of transport, humidity changes, and warehouse storage. That's why Starbucks engineers added extra roasting time and nitrogen sealing, not for taste, but for endurance. The flavor has to survive distribution more than it has to please the nose. The brand's identity, cafe warmth, and community depends on something colder scale. To maintain consistency across nearly 40,000 stores, the company must centralize control. Beans travel thousands of miles before brewing. Marketing calls it global reliability. Economists call it margin protection. In simple terms, the further the beans travel, the more steps added to preserve image over experience. It's not that Starbucks makes bad coffee. It makes system coffee a product that meets the same standard anywhere. That standard, though, has become more about predictability than pleasure. A roast dark enough to survive a 12-week shipping window will always taste the same. And sameness is safer for shareholders than surprise. In America, Starbucks means more than caffeine. It's the symbol of middle-class aspiration, clean stores, quiet background music, a consistent cup anywhere you travel. To many, it replaced the corner diner as the new morning ritual. But that very familiarity comes with a cost. To stay affordable and omnipresent, Starbucks must stretch its model across continents, where labor, logistics, and raw materials all compete for margin. The math of modern coffee is simple, but cruel: shipping efficiency, plus marketing cost, plus labor protection, plus profit target, less room for flavor. Somewhere between the spreadsheets and the roasting drum, character evaporates. What remains is performance, the aroma, the logo, the cup, with your name spelled wrong, all perfectly designed to feel handcrafted while being anything but. Marketing fills the gap. Glossy ads show close-ups of beans tumbling through golden light baristas, smiling steam curling in slow motion. The message is intimacy. The reality is distance, a cup brewed from beans that left their farms half a year ago, touched by more hands in warehouses than in soil. Still, the brand endures. Convenience has its comfort. The problem isn't that Starbucks betrayed anyone, it's that its success demanded compromise. A system that feeds the world can't slow down to taste it. By design, the company now roasts for consistency, not for character. It sells reliability, and reliability is a flavor too, just not a memorable one. Starbucks didn't lose its taste. It traded it for scale. And the aftertaste of that trade still lingers in every cup. Quattro Lavazza. If Starbucks traded craft for scale, Lavazza traded soul for image, and that's the harder loss to swallow. Both began with ideals. Starbucks promised comfort in every corner of the world. Lavazza promised Italy in every cup. But while the American giant standardized taste, the Italian icon polished its story. You can feel the difference the moment you open the bag. The packaging gleams deep blue, bright gold, proud Italian script. It looks like luxury. Then you smell it. Instead of the soft, chocolatey warmth you expect, there's a sharp, smoky scent, almost metallic. The beans look glossy, but they're over-roasted as if the fire burned longer than it should have. Taste tests in 2025 confirmed what regular drinkers have sensed for years. Lavazza's most common blends, Qualità Rossa, Crema e Gusto, now lean, bitter, flat, and lifeless. Reviewers noted burnt toast aroma and astringent aftertaste, yet at the same time, the company's marketing has never been more romantic. Italy's favorite coffee, they say, with slow violins and morning light over Venice. It's not false advertising, it's wishful thinking. Lavazza's challenge isn't malice, it's survival. Running a beverage company in this decade is harder than ever. Costs rise raw, materials fluctuate, transport delays stretch months. Consumers want convenience and sustainability, but still expect low prices. In that storm, Lavazza did what most heritage brands do. It built an image strong enough to weather the chaos. But the trade-off is clear: a coffee that sells Italy without tasting like it. In practice, Lavazza's roasting now relies on automation. Temperature control and timing are governed by sensors, not human instinct. Beans from several continents are blended for stability, not character. And to reach supermarkets, worldwide batches are roasted dark to mask differences in origin and age. The flavor becomes consistent, but it's also exhausted, like a good story told too many times. Experts call this the heritage compression effect, when a legacy brand must imitate its own past to survive the present. The commercials still show family tables, mocha pots, and laughter. But in the factory, the process looks the same as any multinational: conveyor belts, metal drums, nitrogen sealing. It's not Italy, it's industry. Yet, there's something deeper here than disappointment. Lavazza represents more than coffee. It's a piece of cultural identity. To millions, that logo stands for ritual, conversation, belonging. It sits in homes, offices, airports, places that crave a little Italian soul. But when the taste fades, the emotion weakens too. You can only sell the dream for so long before someone wakes up. This isn't to justify the brand's decline. If anything, it's a reminder. The world doesn't need another perfect commercial. It needs good coffee again. The answer to survival isn't in slogans or capsules, but in rediscovering what made people fall in love in the first place: the scent, the warmth, the quiet comfort of a real cup. In chasing perfection on billboards, Lavazza forgot that perfection begins in the cup. The problem isn't that the company got too big, it's that it stopped listening to the small sounds: beans cracking mocha, hissing hearts remembering, and somewhere in a small cafe, an old man lifts his cup, takes one sip, and shakes his head. The cup stays half full, not because he's finished, but because he's done hoping. Tradition means nothing if the roast forgets its roots. 5 Nescafé. The biggest trick of modern life isn't what we drink, it's how easily we believe what's on the label. Nescafé is more than coffee now. It's a symbol of modern convenience, the kind of brand that makes you feel safe because it's everywhere. Airports, offices, hotel rooms, your own pantry shelf. It promises warmth, speed, and comfort in one small scoop. We don't question it because we've grown up seeing that red jar since childhood. Familiarity becomes trust, and trust in today's market sells better than taste. That's where the illusion begins. Nescafé doesn't just sell coffee, it sells the idea that life can be fixed in seconds. Its ads speak of energy, freshness, and optimism, but the reality inside the jar is very different. The granules are not roasted beans. They're condensed extract brewed under pressure, dehydrated by heat, then sealed in nitrogen so they can last for years. What's left is caffeine and aroma powder, not flavor. Yet the world keeps drinking it. According to Nestlé's own report, more than 5,000 cups of Nescafé are consumed every second. 5,000 every tick of the clock. That isn't coffee culture, that's mass hypnosis. People across continents begin their mornings with a product that barely resembles what it imitates. And somehow that feels normal. The real issue isn't about bitterness or aftertaste. It's that Nescafé quietly changed the definition of coffee itself. When instant powder becomes the world's daily standard, the meaning of freshly brewed fades into nostalgia. This is not a food problem, it's a cultural one. We've been taught to trade time for illusion to accept efficiency as flavor. The ritual of brewing, the sound of beans grinding the first swirl of aroma, all replaced by a teaspoon and a slogan. Beneath the surface, this is the dark side of the modern era. Everything faster, everything simpler, nothing real. The logic is always the same: if it's quick, it's good enough. And so we rush through our mornings, drink our convenience, and wonder why nothing feels satisfying anymore. We're not addicted to coffee, we're addicted to shortcuts. Every spoonful of Nescafé tells a quiet story about who we've become: people who want connection, but settle for simulation. It's not evil, it's just empty. The cup looks full, the aroma feels right, but what lingers after isn't comfort. It's a kind of silence, like the pause after music that never really played. Still, the circle keeps turning: caffeine, rush, fatigue, repeat. The jar empties, we buy another and call it a routine. But routines, when built on convenience, often keep us numb. We forget what real slowness tastes like. To step out of that circle, we don't need to quit coffee, just slow down. Smell the beans brew with care, and remember that patience still has flavor. Because real coffee, like real life, only reveals itself when we stop rushing long enough to taste it. After 5 brands, the pattern becomes clear. It's not just bad beans or weak brews. It's a reflection of how modern convenience quietly changed what we call quality. From Folgers to Nescafé, each name tells the same story in a different accent. Time traded for profit, care replaced by marketing, flavor replaced by speed. But in every supermarket aisle, among all the noise, there are still a few brands that remember what coffee used to mean, not just energy, but experience. And they're proving that good taste doesn't have to disappear in the race to make it faster. 6 Illy. Pop open an Illy can and it greets you with a soft hiss, not from gimmickry, but from precision. That sound means pressure meeting patience. Inside isn't air. It's nitrogen sealed to keep the beans fresh, aromatic, and stable. It's one of the few coffees that still treats freshness as a science instead of a slogan. For nearly a century, Illy has kept that same promise: pure Arabica blended from 9 origins, roasted with discipline, and preserved with methodical care. Every tin feels the same: metallic, minimal, almost clinical, but what's inside smells alive. The aroma is clean and balanced, neither too floral nor too bitter. The first sip doesn't shock the tongue. It settles on it, gentle but deep, with faint hints of chocolate and toasted nuts. There's no noise, no bitterness chasing your throat, only the feeling that someone measured every second it took to make this cup right. In a world obsessed with shortcuts, Illy went the opposite way. Each batch is tested over 100 times before it reaches a can. The company invests heavily in research, employing food chemists as much as roasters. Even the temperature curves are controlled within a fraction of a degree. They don't chase trends. No limited edition, caramel mocha harvest, just one red logo, one philosophy: discipline equals purity. Experts call it controlled craft, the idea that precision can preserve soul if used with restraint. That approach gives Illy its edge, but also its limits. Perfection has a cost. Illy's beans are sourced from long-term partners under strict contracts, which ensures quality but narrows diversity. Its nitrogen-sealed tins keep flavor locked in, but also make the brand feel distant, almost sterile, compared to the warmth of small roasters who hand off beans, still breathing with natural oils. And while its flavor profile is clean, some coffee lovers find it too predictable, too engineered. The romance of imperfection, the subtle surprise of an artisanal roast, doesn't live here. Even the price keeps Illy slightly apart. It costs more than most supermarket brands, often twice as much as a bag of mainstream coffee. For some, that price is proof of value. For others, it's a barrier to connection. Illy's identity, elegant, professional, unwavering, can feel intimidating to those who grew up with the messy comfort of home-brewed coffee. It's the kind of brand that earns respect, not affection. Still, Illy's consistency is a quiet victory in a noisy market. It reminds us that technology doesn't have to erase tradition. The blend may be precise, but the experience feels human. It's the kind of coffee that asks for nothing dramatic, just a clean cup, a quiet moment, and a bit of attention. Beyond that, Illy proves something larger, that purity doesn't mean perfection, and precision doesn't have to feel cold. The downside of being exact is predictability, but predictability also means trust. Every tin tastes the same, not because it's soulless, but because someone cared enough to make it that way. So while others chase trends and flavors, Illy stays where it started, with discipline, patience, and a belief that the science of coffee can still serve the art of it. Because real flavor isn't about being loud, it's about being exact. Setamani Inteligencia. No slogans, no glitter. Just a name whispered in cafes by people who still care where their coffee comes from. Founded in Chicago back in 1995, Intelligentsia began with a simple belief that coffee should have a face, a name, and a story. Long before third wave coffee became a movement, they built something new. A direct relationship between farmers and roasters, a transparent system where every bean could be traced and every grower paid fairly. Their idea of direct trade wasn't charity. It was partnership, and it changed how specialty coffee around the world defined honesty. The bag looks plain, like something from a small-town bakery. A brown paper wrapper, hand-stamped label, roast date, written by pen. But open it, and the aroma bursts alive, fruit-forward, clean, full of character. There's no artificial smoke or sugar scent, only a brightness that feels both fresh and grounded. Each cup tastes slightly different because every harvest, every origin, every roast curve is personal. In an industry where convenience became identity, Intelligentsia built its brand on attention. They visit farms, taste hundreds of samples, and roast in small batches that rarely exceed what one day's demand can justify. Every farm partner is named, every batch documented. It's the opposite of the corporate system that treats beans as commodities. Here, coffee isn't a formula, it's a relationship. Online reviewers often describe Intelligentsia as coffee with conscience. Some praise its complexity, berry tones from Ethiopia, honey sweetness from Guatemala, the smooth caramel of a fresh Chicago roast. Others point out its limits. It's pricey, selective, sometimes too refined. It doesn't have the comforting punch of big brand blends. It asks you to slow down and notice the difference. Not everyone wants that. But its achievements are hard to dismiss. Intelligentsia has become one of the most respected names in specialty coffee, part of the handful of roasters that shaped a global shift in how people think about flavor and fairness. It's taught both consumers and competitors that sustainability isn't just a label. It's a contract between effort and respect. And even as the company grows, it keeps a human core, small cafes, local partnerships, real people cupping beans by hand. Of course, perfection has its cost. Limited supply means higher prices. Small batches mean higher risk. And a model that prizes precision can sometimes feel distant to those who just want a warm, familiar cup. Yet those flaws are part of its truth. Intelligentsia doesn't pretend to be for everyone. It simply stands as proof that good taste doesn't need mass approval to matter. The beauty of Intelligentsia isn't in the branding, but in what it represents: a return to patience, connection, and craft. Each cup feels like a reminder that behind every bean is a person who cared, a farmer, a roaster, a brewer. It's coffee that feels alive because it's still made by people, not by process. Because real coffee isn't perfect, it's personal. And when you know who grew it, every sip feels earned. Coffee isn't just a drink, it's a mirror. It reflects how we live, how we rush, and what we value. Some brands forgot that along the way, trading aroma for marketing, craft for convenience. Others, like Illy and Intelligentsia, remind us that coffee still has a soul, one that can't be automated or faked. The truth is simple: good coffee doesn't need to shout, and bad coffee doesn't need to lie. What matters isn't how strong it wakes you up, but how honest it feels when you sip it. So maybe the next time you stand in the coffee aisle, you'll pause not to check the price or the label, but to remember what you're really buying. Not caffeine, not a habit, but a little piece of time, patience, and care. Because that's what real flavor is made of.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.